Okay, so good morning, everyone. So in the last class, we had looked at the types of pollination, that is self and cross pollination, and we had briefly looked at the advantages and disadvantages for both of these types. Yeah, and I had asked you to go through these particular differences, which is like clearly mentioned, and we have already discussed about it. So today we are starting with the cross pollination mechanism and why does it happen more extensively in the nature or in the natural surrounding. So that's what the title, nature favors the cross pollination. Why? We will see through different points. So the first point is unisexuality. Now, the moment the plants, they are unisexual, the plant itself, not just the flower. If the flowers are unisexual, it can still undergo that gytonogamy type of self-pollination. That is different flower, but on the same plant. But let's say the unisexual plants itself, that means one particular plant will only generate male flower, and the other similar species, for example papaya, it can produce only female flower. So this plant itself, they can be completely male or female plant based on the flowers that they produce. So in these kind of plants, there is no other way than cross pollination to happen, right? So their cross pollination is quite obvious there. If that also does not happen, there will be no fertilization, which is again obvious fact. So that is unisexuality, and the examples we have already seen is palm and papaya type of plant. Now the second factor which causes more and more of cross pollination over self pollination is dichogamy. Now dichogamy, dicho refers to differential or two different times, and gamy refers to the gametes or the fusion of those gametes, right? So different timings of maturation of the androecium, that is the male gamete, and the gynoecium, that is the female gamete. So that is what is dichogamy. Now whichever happens first, there are again two subtypes of this dichogamy. And when I said earlier, you will have too many terminologies to remember. So these are few of them. Yeah. So dichogamy, different maturation timing of the male and female gametes. Now in many bisexual flowers, the anthers mature earlier than the stigma, and that is called as protandry. So this protran or protron, that means earlier, and this andry refers to androecium, that is the male gamete. So earlier maturation of the male gamete, that is the anther. For example, in bhindi or sweet peas or sunflower, all of these they have certain bisexual flowers, and in those cases the anthers, they mature earlier than the stigma portion. So that is one example of dichogamy. In the second one, the stigma will mature earlier than the anthers, and that is called as protogyny. So protogyny, again the same, gyne refers to the gynoecium part. So that is earlier maturation of the like style stigma ovary, the female gamete component, or just the stigma, so that it is like ready to receive the anthers. So that is what is protogyny. So dichogamy, different maturation timings. If the anther is maturing first, that is protandry, and if the stigma is maturing first, that is protogyny. And the examples of protogyny, this is your custard apple and peepal tree, right? Again, a common examples that you would know of. You just have to remember which example is for what type. So that is dichogamy. Now self sterility. Self sterility is one of the very, very interesting mechanism. If stigma receives the pollen from the same flower, the pollen fails to undergo further growth. For example, in orchids, right? Now I assume you would know the orchid flowers, And in that case, I guess, yeah, I have, yeah, these ones, right? So you would already know that there are the stigma and sorry, the stigma is going to receive the pollen grains, but the maturation or the growth of the anther on the stigma does not happen. So they are kind of rejected by the same plant. So that way, one mechanism which avoids the self-pollination and which favors the cross-pollination is the self-sterility. Now, you might wonder, how does this happen? How does the self-sterility happen? So if you remember yesterday or day before, some time back, we had discussion about the recognition of the pollen grains, right? There are certain protein-like molecules present on the surface of pollen grain, and they will be recognized by the receptor-like molecule on the stigma. And then that recognition has happened, and then it continues to grow further, and then the anther will move into the style and then reach to the ovary and then fertilization. So that recognition process is like not allowed to happen, and that way the self sterility can be attained in orchid like flowers. Yes, Yajnesh.
So the stigma, it doesn't grains from the same plant.
Sorry, come again. The stigma doesn't
Like accept pollen grains from the same plant. So is it like that?
No, I still did not get the question. If the pollen grains from the same plant falls onto
In
this,
self-sterility. So I don't understand that.
so now obviously there are mechanisms to recognize the pollen grain, right? Which is self and which is non-self. So the moment the stigma recognize this as the self pollen grains, it will reject it. And that,
so it doesn't want self.
and that is what is self-sterility. Ultimate phenomena is that recognition, right? But in specific plant, that recognition is specifically for rejection. In most others, that recognition is to receive the same pollen grain, right? So, and this is more of protein-protein interaction, which allows and which does not allow this further growth. Okay, anyone else? Any question? I hope at least these three factors are clear to everyone: unisexuality, dichogamy, and self-sterility. Now, the next factor which favors cross-pollination is hercogamy. Now, this is literally having the mechanical structural barriers. Like in simplest term, what is there is like either around the pollen grain or around the stigma, there will be certain structures of the flower which are growing, and that way the anthers and stamen will not be able to reach each other, and that is what is mechanical barrier, and that particular phenomena is referred to as hercogamy. So in some flowers, the pollen cannot reach the stigma of the same flower. So that is because of the presence of physical barrier present. For example, a hood bearing stigma on pansy flower or even this iris flower. So I guess pansy flowers are these ones. Yeah. So now I don't have a zoomed out picture of this. So I need just a moment. I'll show it to you. Pansy flowers. So if you look at one particular flower, so there is this particular structure. I'm not sure if you are able to see through the pictures. If it is here. Yeah, actually you can see it here a bit. So there are different layers. You can see this petal is little down. These petals, they have kind of made a structure which is separating the anther and stigma, and that way they will not allow the anthers to fall onto the stigma of the same plant, and that is what is
barrier.
Yeah, it's like a physical barrier. Yeah, and that way the hercogamy works, and similar is the case with iris flowers as well. So let me show you that as well.
So,
Iris.
but what is the problem, sir? Like, if the anther falls into the stigma, it will also lead to like the zygote formation, right?
Correct. But then that is why some plants they have adapted to these mechanisms so that they don't want to undergo the self-pollination because of the increased viability of the seeds or increased genetic variation and so on. Because of these factors, they don't want self-pollination to happen. So again, this is just the iris, not Irish, iris flower, which you can see clearly this structure being developed at the center of the flower, which does not allow the anthers to fall onto the stigma. Yes, Prakriti and one more person has raised hand. Prakriti,
Yes, Nesh has also raised it.
you go ahead.
Yeah, sir. So, how do the pollens from other plants then come into this for cross pollination?
Oh, so if you read this carefully, it just the pollen cannot reach the stigma of the same flower. That means these barriers are physical barriers. So let's say you will have opening to the surrounding environment, right? You will just have a separate compartment for the anther and stigma, or the anthers will be kind of covered, or the stigma will be kind of covered. So that way, these functions or these structures functions, right? But then it will still be open to the wider pollen grains, and also then these are open for insect pollination, which can like taking out for nectar, or so they can put their sting or their legs around these flowers, and that way the pollen gets deposited. Yeah, and if it is wide open flower and just physically separating the anther and stigma, then the wind even can function as a pollinating agent. Okay, Prakriti.
Yeah, sir.
Okay, Yajnesh.
Sure, and one more reason it wouldn't want self-pollination is because won't the genes become like bad?
Yeah, but genes wouldn't become bad if they are mutated. They might have certain effects on the plant characteristic, can be in terms of seed or can be in terms of flower or genetic disorder or the growth and development factors. So that way. Okay, so that is hercogamy. And the last one, which is not highlighted, it is the heterostyle. Now, this heterostyle refers to the stigma and anthers, they grow at different heights itself. So, hetero is different, and styly refers to the arrangement of that particular style, stigma and anther. So they grow at different height. For example, prime rose and oxalis. Now again, I have flowers, but then these are not enlarged enough. So let me show you here. Prime rose. Yeah. So these are your prime rose flowers. Can I see? I have this. No, again. Yeah, probably you can, if this doesn't get zoomed in, the others get. Okay, let me see if I can zoom in just like this. I cannot. I can. Yeah. So I don't know if you people can see these flowers.
Sir. You can just open it in a open the image in a new tab and then so.
Okay, now it's not going back up to Shaisa.
Control minus.
Yeah, control minus or even the cursor would work. Yeah, now it is working. 100. Okay.
Yeah.
You mean to say, where is
Open image in a new tab.
this one, for example, that way? I don't know. This is some gardening Add
No,
what?
no, you have to right click. You have to right click and open image in a new tab.
Oh, that way you are saying open
Yeah.
in.
A new tab. First, open image. No. Open image in a new tab.
Yeah, here it is.
Yeah. Now you can directly
Yeah.
zoom it.
Thank you. Yes. So if you look at these particular structures, again, it kind of getting blurred, but yeah, here you can see it that. So these anthers, they are kind of running perpendicular, and the stigma, these are kind of at the center, right? So that way they are growing in like different directions or different heights altogether. So that is how it will avoid the kind of self-pollination, and then more chances there for the cross-pollination. So that is, and again, not every flower undergoes all of these. It just some flowers they undergo hercogamy, some flowers they prefer heterostyly, and so on. So that way, all these mechanisms they work. Okay, so that is the mechanism of heterostyle. Again, this diagram kind of represents, so if you see here, these are the anthers at the like almost half of the style region or half of the flower length, and this is the stigma here. And if this is the case, then they will have certain barrier here, like the anther height is little different, and then when the flower will blossom, these anthers they will move to the sides, right? And the stigma will stay inside, which is much deeper inside this tubular flower. So that way also the arrangement can be in the heterostyle. So these are the different mechanism in which the nature favors cross pollination. Yeah, these are the 5 factors which you need to remember, just for the like the mechanism by which it can happen. Okay, any question, anyone here? I hope you have understood this part. Again, though it will take a little while for you to remember what is what, but like I said, if you remember by the words, like breaking down the words, then it will be easier to remember. Okay, so if there are no questions, we can move on to the next part of the pollination, that is agents of cross-pollination, or it is also simply called as pollinating agents, which is ultimately happens in the what we say cross-pollination. So there are various agents like insect, wind, water, and bird, and there are several others, but we are not going to look at all those. We'll just look at these 4 main ones, and they are also specifically termed with what we say Greek or Latin word. I don't know what is this, but they are also labeled with these ones. So insect pollinated, they are called entomophilous flowers, and the phenomena is entomophily. Wind pollinated, they are flowers, they are called as anemophilous flowers, or the phenomena or the mechanism is called as anemophily. Water pollinated, same, hydrophilous. Bird pollinated, ornithophily or ornithophilous flower.
Sir,
So
we'll have to remember these for the exam.
yeah, this you need to remember.
Yeah.
So that's why I have mentioned it here.
Sure.
And so we'll look at one by one. What are these, right? You also need to remember what should be the characteristic of flower when it is getting pollinated by a certain pollinating agent, that way. So for example, here, if you look at entomon, it means insect, and phily or phi, it refers to affinity. So it's like the flowers which has affinity towards the insects, or rather the insects, they are getting attracted to the flowers because of certain characteristics. Now what are those characteristics? Obviously the flower has to be large, because if it is a too tiny flower, insects obviously will not prefer, assuming that there will be no nectar or no scent. So they have to be relatively large. Again, large does not mean super large, but relatively large. Let's say even 3 or 4 centimeter or above 2 centimeter flower, that should still be called as large flower for compared to the insect size. So that is having the size large. Brightly colored, again to attract insect, that is very obvious. If there are dull colors, insect may or may not find it attractive enough to go and sit on them, so ultimately no pollen grains will be carried. So that's why they have to be brightly colored, so that more and more insect comes and more pollen grains also comes along with those insects. Again, this flower, like it would be best that if they produce nectar, which is food for insect. Not always that all the flowering plants should produce nectar to attract insect. Sometimes it will be just done by the brightly colored petals, but sometimes they would need to produce nectar, and which is ultimately the food for these insects. For then again, insects will get attracted and pollination can happen. Same is the case with the scent, that is some essence or some sort of fragrance has to be there to the flower. So you can clearly observe a phenomena that if you have a fragrant flower and a non-fragrant flower and a brightly colored flower compared to a dull colored flower, you can just keep it on your table and you can just observe the phenomena to which flower does the insect get attracted easily, and that will give you the answer for this. In terms of pollen grains, these are sticky or spiny to enable them to be carried by insects easily. Sticky obviously so that they can stick to the body or the surface of the insects, and spiny so that they can get entangled with the legs or structures within the insect, and so that they can be carried easily by those insects. Stigma is again sticky for the same purpose, so that whatever is coming to this stigma, it will stick to the stigma itself. So for example, let's say insect is carrying the pollen grain with its body or with its leg, and they will stick to the stigma, and then they will be recognized, and if at all they are self as in of the same species, they will get fertilized further. And like stigma does not generally hang out from the flower. In some of the flowers you might have seen stigma kind of hanging out from the flower. I don't know the examples as such, but like those bell flowers, so hanging flowers, hanging stigma flowers, hanging stigma. Hello, internet. Yeah, for example, like this. Yeah, even in your hibiscus commonly. Oh yeah, of course I know the example. Yeah, so these are like hanging, and so in these cases usually the pollination is not preferred. The preferred way of pollination is not insect pollination, right? So and the reason is quite obvious. If the stigma is hanging, if for insect to go and sit on those stigma is little difficult, because of the wind it will keep flying away always, right? That's a logical answer. So that is the structure of the pollen grain as well as the stigma. The flowers, they tend to be in clusters, so that they can make more conspicuous, that is like kind of bunch, which is like kind of very attractive otherwise. And especially when the flowers are small, like in case of dahlia flowers or even the orchids that way. So like most of these flowers which are getting pollinated by this entomophily mechanism, they are usually like preferably, not usually, not always for sure, they are preferably in the groups, and the examples are dahlia, sunflower and orchids. These are common ones, so you can remember these. That is as an example of insect pollination. Again, any question here? I assume this part is very simple. You just have to go by the logical flow of the information. Let's say in exam, even if you don't read these topics, by logic you should be able to write this, right? What will the insect will get attracted to? It's obviously bright color, a little bigger size, nectar and the scent. And then what should be the quality of the stigma and the pollen grain? So that way you should be able to write at least 4 or 5 points, which is sufficient for 2 marks, right? So, and this goes by then quite flow of logic and examples you need to remember, of course. So that is entomophilous flowers or entomophily mechanism of cross pollination, that is insect pollination. Next one is the anemophily. Now again, anemo refers to wind and phily, it refers to the affinity. So these flowers, they get pollinated due to the presence of the wind. Now these flowers, they usually possess a special feature. Now special feature, it can be any flower structure, so that it will allow the deposition of the pollen grain onto the stigma. Like it's an additional feature compared to what usually flower has. But again, that is not a mandate for wind pollination. Yeah, it is just most of the flowers which undergo wind pollination, they have certain additional structures or special features. Like an example of maize we will see. Now in this case, the flowers, they are usually small. Again, because of the wind, it can reach, the air can reach anywhere. So that way the flowers are, even if they are small, that is fine. They are not going to attract anything, like wind attraction is not required at all. It will flow any which way. So there no brightly colored flower are required. And they are usually often dull green or any dull color. Usually if you see of the flower, that is mostly getting pollinated with help of wind. So that is anemophilous flowers. Again, they need not produce scent or nectar and so on. So the stamens of these flowers, that is anemophilous flowers, they are long and they can hang out of the flower to be exposed to wind. Now again, take the example of hibiscus for that matter. The stamens, they are hanging out along with the stigma, and that way, if the wind comes, the pollen grain can be carried away with that wind to the different flower for cross pollination. Usually anthers are large and they are loosely attached to the filament. So that connective between anther and filament is a little loose, and that way the anthers, they are loosely attached to the filament, so that even a slightest of the wind can allow the movement of these anthers. Pollens, they are produced in large quantity. Now again, this is quite obvious because in wind there will be quite a lot of wastage. You cannot guarantee that you will always, like whatever, let's say 10 anthers are produced in one particular flower, they will always land onto some other flower. They might land onto random flower, or they might land onto the soil or anywhere else or any other part of the plant. The chance of having them on the stigma directly is less, and that is when the large quantity is required, so that the percentage or the population of that anther which is falling on the stigma is ultimately also increased a bit, and that way it needs large quantities of pollen grain. Also the pollen grains are light in terms of weight, and they are dry and smooth, so that they can easily be carried away by the wind. And the stigmas, they are feathery and they hang out of flower to trap the pollen grains. Feathery because they are like hair-like structure. So as and when the pollens are flying with the wind, and if they are crossing the stigma, because of this feathery texture of the stigma, they can get trapped in it, and then they will further go for maturation. The examples: wheat, rice, corn, your rye, barley, oats, all these examples, they have anemophilous flowers. Okay. Any question here? Again, I hope the flow of information here is quite logical and also a little boring, I must say. Not something that we would like to learn, but yeah, we don't have an option. So that is the anemophily or the anemophilous flower or wind pollination. Okay, I guess we can just finish these two types. Yeah, I guess, yeah, we can. Yeah, we can just finish these 3 slides. So hydrophily, again, hydro refers to water, phily refers to affinity. And this kind of pollination mostly happens in the aquatic plant because the pollination is happening with the water. So the possibility of this happening is obviously in most of the aquatic plants. Now, again, here also the pollen grain, they have to be produced in large quantities because they will be spread out all over the water body. Some pollen grains, they have specific gravity and almost equal to that of water, so that they remain floating on the surface of the water. So when the flowers are being produced by these aquatic plants and the pollen grains are also on the surface of the water, there is a higher chance of pollination or fertilization. In some cases, the male flowers, they are such that they float on the surface of the water till they meet the female flower. For example, Vallisneria. So this is the example, what is called as Vallisneria flower, which is aquatic plant. So you can see the male flowers, they are here. So they will release the pollen grains and they will become like floating pollen grains at the water level, where the female flowers are present, and then the pollen grain will mature with this stigma, and then it will get fertilized, and then it will produce seed and so on. So that way, the aquatic plant, they uses hydrophily as the means of pollination. Again, here you need to remember one of the name, that is or one of the example. So Vallisneria is an example of hydrophily pollination. I would also assume that lotus, which is again an aquatic plant, should also have what we say, the hydrophilous flower or hydrophily as means of pollination. But I guess I'm just logically putting it, I'm not too sure of that fact. So that is hydrophily. Now there are other types of pollination, like for example by birds. Again, this canna and bignonia, these kind of flowers. So this is these are two. This is the common one that you would have seen, which is canna. Yeah, this is bignonia flower, this is canna flower, which are getting pollinated by the birds. This is called as kardal in local language. So you would see this around the water bodies, or even in Sahyadri, if you know, right in front of Padma Priya's house, there is this water root zone treatment. On top of that, you will find all these canna flowers. Yes, Prakriti.
So can you go back to the hydrophily slide?
Yes.
Yeah, so here it says that the some plants pollen grains have a specific gravity almost equal to that of water, and so that they can remain floating. I didn't get that. Shouldn't they have less density so that they can float?
Correct. Less density
But
is
what do they mean by specific gravity almost equal to that of water?
specific gravity, as in ultimately they will have density which is similar to water. Yeah, that is what it.
Okay.
Yeah, so you, if you know that what is that equation, I forgot, something m1 plus m2 is equal to g upon something something something. That is the equation of specific gravity. So
Yeah.
like I don't remember exactly that physics part, but it ultimately means if the mass of that particular pollen grain is equivalent to the mass of the water of certain volume, then obviously they have same density, and that way it can float. Yeah, I hope that's clear.
Yeah.
Okay, so that was ornithophily, where the example is canna, which is again easier to remember because you must have seen these flowers. Then there is something called as elephophily, which is the pollination happening or affected by the elephants. and it is found in this Rafflesia flower. Now I have deliberately posted the picture of this with this boy and a girl to let you know the size of the flower. Yeah, you can just imagine the size. Yeah, it's a huge flower, huge as in huge, and these are,
Humongous.
yeah, literally. And this is specifically found in the Southeast Asia. So this was actually identified by this guy called as Raffel, RAFF.
So it is the largest flower in the world.
Correct. It is the largest flower in the world, and because of this guy's name, who found this somewhere, I guess in 1998 or so, and since then it has been named so Rafflesia. And now it's simple. Obviously, in the jungles, these elephants, they move, so they will obviously encounter these flowers. They will carry the pollen grains on their skin or on their foot, and then they will be passing it on to the stigma of the different flower. So that way it is kind of pollinating. And again, this is like a very specific mechanism, right? It is not like birds or wind pollination or insect pollination. It specifically happens. Again, one like you need to remember this fact that a particular type of flower can get pollinated by two or more mechanisms, right? That is very obvious thing. So for example, something which is getting pollinated due to the insect can also get pollinated due to the wind. Yeah, because wind is everywhere, air is everywhere, pollen grains are everywhere, right? So that way this can have two or more mechanisms as well. Some flowers where they have specialized structures, like for example aquatic plant, there you will not have the pollination by let's say wind, for example. You might have it, but then if the anthers are within the water body, obviously wind will not reach there. So that is like quite logical. So what I mean to say is, in a one particular flower there can be one or more mechanism of the pollination, and in some there can be very specific only one mechanism, like hydrophily and this elephophily. Okay, and then the last part that we will cover for today is the artificial pollination. Okay, this we will do it next time. Artificial pollination. Now artificial pollination, that is referred to, it's a human intervention. So when you literally take up the pollen from one flower and transfer it to the stigma of the other flower, that is artificial pollination. Now here you might want to take the flower from the same plant or a different plant of the same species, but that is still an artificial pollination because human intervention is there. Now earlier times, that is the Babylonian period or Babylonian era, this was a very common practice to sprinkle the male flowers of the palms on the female flowers. So what they used to do is they used to literally take out the stigma or just crush the flowers and spread it out, like throw it. And obviously they did not know the what sexuality, whether it's a male plant, female plant, they did not know this. But the result, whatever was obtained, was obviously more number of seeds, more number of palm trees, and so on. And that way they were continuing this practice. This was like very ancient time. And that was the practice, which was still a practice of artificial pollination. And it is also otherwise called as artificial crossing, because you are like artificially doing a particular type of cross in biology. Yes.
What is grafting?
Grafting is taking out a portion of a plant and putting it either in the soil or putting it in combination with other plant. That is grafting.
So that results to a different variety.
That leads to sometimes
What's the point? What's the point of it? What's the point of it then?
point of grafting or artificial pollination.
Grafting.
So grafting usually ensures a better health of a plant in a way. And if you have noticed, nowadays whatever mangoes we eat, there are more of the grafted mango trees because they have certain what we say desired characteristics, right? Like let's say, for example, you find a rose plant in Sahyadri garden, and you take a branch of it and you sow it in your own garden. That is what is grafting, because you like the flower for certain characteristic and then you propagate it. That is what is grafting. And in case of mango also, it's the same. You like particular variety of mango, so you bring that particular mango and sow it in your own land and you let it grow. That is grafting. Or other usage of this word in grafting refers to, let's say, you have two varieties of mango, right? One which is very sweet and the other one which is very big in the fruit size, right? Both are mango. So what you do is you take a stem of one plant with the roots, and you take a shoot of other mango type with the leaves, and then you cross it like diagonally, or what we call as oblique cross, right, along the stem, but in a diagonal way, right? Which will increase the surface, and then you put them together, right, and you tie it, and that will grow. So whatever fruits it will bear, it will have a sweet and yet larger variety of the mango. So that is also called as grafting, which is like changing the inherent characteristics of the plant. And grafting is also used in human organ transplant, like what we say, liver grafting is done, that means liver replacement, or knee grafting, that is knee replacement. So that is also used. Okay, so this artificial pollination is also called artificial crossing, which is again the standard practice which is adopted by many plant breeders to generate a new variety. And that is what I said with respect to the grafting. If let's say you identify two plant varieties, they are better for some reason, again they are of mango only, but they are of little different characteristic. Or let's say one is very sweet and one is very large, and you want to fuse them, then you take the pollen grains and put it on the stigma of one of the plant which has better characteristics, and then you let it grow. So that way this will be called as artificial crossing. The mechanism by which, or the processes which are involved in this artificial pollination, is something called as emasculation, or in this case the anthers are removed from the young flowers. Emasculation, so it's actually removal of the male gamete, and that way the only female flowers will be present in that particular flower. So obviously self-pollination chance is completely gone. The only possible way that these flowers can germinate or turn into seeds or fruit is the cross-pollination. So that is one way, which is emasculation. Or the other way is cover these flowers with the plastic bags. So after you put certain pollen grains onto those flowers, like onto a desired flowers, of course, again the same example, if I take, let's say the mango with a sweet variety and the mango with a larger fruit size, and if I have transferred pollen grain from one of these plant to the other one, then I will cover the flowers of these plants with the plastic bag, so that no other pollen grain can fall onto the stigma once I have done whatever is desired for me. And that is called as bagging technique. So one is emasculation technique, which helps in artificial pollination, and the other one is bagging. Bagging literally means you put a bag around those flowers. And after pollinating, obviously such flowers will produce a plant with desired qualities or desired variety. So that is what is artificial pollination. Any question, anyone? We will stop here for today, and then we can continue the same topic in the next class.